All right, good morning everybody. My name is Peter. I was asked to do this little video about how to make bread without kneading, without rolling it out. So the first thing we need is our ingredients. I've got in here 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and this is the yeast I'm using, Fleischmann's all-purpose rice. So it's an instant yeast. And we need 1.5 cups of hot water. So we'll start. Flour is in the bowl. We'll add our salt. We'll add our yeast. And we're going to stir this up a little bit before we put the water in. Just a little mix. Alright, that's good enough. So now we're going to add our water. Now this is going to get very sloppy. It's not like your regular dough, but that's okay. We'll see what happens. Now this is hot water. And the reason for that is so that the yeast will activate and rise. So we're going to stir this up. It's real messy. It's going to get real messy. Now the nice thing about this bread, there's really no work. This is the hardest thing I'm going to have to do is what I'm doing right now. Is mix this up to a nice consistency. There's no getting your hands dirty, there's nothing. Now it does get a bit messy, but that's okay. My wife will clean it up later. I'm just a baker. You can see how sloppy it is. It's not really a dry dough, it's just very sticky. We're going to make sure I get all the flour at the bottom. Flip it around a little bit. Now you can use this same recipe to make little buns. You just put them in the pan and put them in the oven and make, this dough here will make 12 little buns. Okay, that's good enough now. That's mixed enough. Alright, so now what we're going to do, we're going to leave this like that. I'll lick this off later. We're going to put some saran on there now. Alright, so this saran goes on. Now this took me a total of not even 5 minutes. So there's our dough. It's going to go on the countertop for 3 hours, at least 3 hours. Now, you can leave it for 4, 5, or 6 hours, but 3 hours is the least. And just put it on the countertop. Doesn't have to be in the heat, just room temperature. So we'll set it over here for now. And that's it for now. We'll be back later. Alright, we're back. So, my dough's been sitting on the countertop for a little more than 3 hours. So let's have a look. I don't know if you can see all the bubbles on there, which is a good thing. And you can see it's like jelly, but that's okay. It's not a stiff dough, it's a very sloppy dough. So okay, let's just recap what we've done so far. If you want to get a pencil and paper, I'll give you all the ingredients, which isn't very many. So I'm just going to dump this on the countertop while you get your pencil and paper. So we need a bit of flour on the countertop. Going to make a mess. My wife will love this. All right. My wooden spoon is over here. Let's dump this on the counter. So all we're going to do now is, this is another step. We're going to dump this on the counter and we're going to fold it. It's very sticky dough, but that's okay. So, we're going to put a bit of flour on top here. And we're just going to fold it over like this. Just kind of, doesn't have to be exactly, just kind of fold it over. Again, and again. You can tell that the dough is very, very soft, very flexible. Alright, that's good enough. So we'll just kind of make it into a little ball here, more or less. Like a loaf of bread. Yeah, that's good enough. So now, washy. I'm just going to clean this bowl out here right now for a second here. I'm going to use this bowl again. Get rid of all the stuff inside here. Alright, good enough. Alright, you got your pencil and paper ready? So to recap what we've done, we had all our ingredients laid out, and there's a reason for that. Because if you go get your stuff, all of a sudden you decide, oh, I don't have any flour left. So put it all out there, then you know you have everything. So what we need is 3 cups of flour, white flour. You could use whole wheat flour if you like. So 3 cups of flour, a half a teaspoon of yeast, a teaspoon of salt. When I mentioned the yeast, it's a quarter of a teaspoon of yeast, a teaspoon of salt, and those are pretty well your main ingredients. And then when you mix that together, you add 1.5 cups of hot water. So make sure it's nice and hot. And then you mix all that together, cover with saran wrap on a counter for 3 hours, and this is the next step. So now what we're going to do with this is, we're going to put a piece of parchment paper in this bowl. Doesn't matter how. So just take this dough now. Bingo. There it is. Okay, so now what we're going to do with this is we're going to set it back on the countertop for 30 minutes. Cover it with a towel. And while this is sitting on the countertop, I'm going to preheat the oven at 450 with my Dutch oven inside. So this is the Dutch oven I'm going to use. The main thing is make sure this handle is not plastic. If you don't have a Dutch oven, you can use one of these. As long as you have a proper handle, make sure this is not plastic because it'll be melting. So you can use a pot like this, but this is what we're going to use. So we're going to put the lid on. We're going to set it in the oven. We're going to preheat the oven to 450. I'm going to put this back on the countertop with the towel on it for 30 minutes. There, good enough. So while that's on the counter for 30 minutes, I'm going to clean up this mess. I'm going to start my oven, set my timer for 30 minutes, and then we'll do the next step. So we'll be back in a few minutes. All right, we're back. Our 30 minutes are up, so we're going to get our bread now from the counter that's been sitting there for 30 minutes. Our dough, I should say, not bread. It's not bread yet. We're almost there. We're almost there. There it is there. A nice little dough. Alright. Going to get our Dutch oven out of the oven. It's been in there at 450 degrees for almost a half an hour. So it's hot. So all we do now is we'll just take the parchment paper and all and just put it right in the Dutch oven. Just grab it like this, pick it up, and right in here. That's all we do. Put our gloves back on. Put the lid back on. Okay, back in the oven. Now we're going to put this in the oven for 30 minutes. So I'm going to put my timer on for 30 minutes. Now while I was doing this, it brought back some memories when I was in Switzerland. My mother did all the baking, bread, cakes, everything. But we didn't have a stove like this. So my job, because I was the oldest, used to be, once the dough was made, to take it about 2 kilometers down the road to a bakery. And they would bake your bread or cakes and for a small fee. And that's how we used to do our baking. We didn't have a stove like this, so we had to go deliver it and then go pick it up again. Now, what I like to do also is in the summertime, especially in the fall when the peaches are out, I like to make peach pies. So I do peach preserves. I must have 30 jars downstairs, and I've probably got about 8 or 9 peach pies in the freezer. I used to do apple pies at the same time, but when you do apple pies and freeze them, and then when you bake them again, they get very soggy. So I quit doing apples. I do apple pie right from scratch and fresh, and then that's the way I do them, but I don't freeze them anymore. But I like to do preserves, relish, salsa, you name it. I love doing that kind of stuff. There used to be a joke when we lived in Oshawa. A friend of mine, he passed away now. He used to come over to the house and he'd say to me, "Hey Pete, let's go for a beer." And I used to say, "I can't, I got a pie in the oven." So that used to be a big joke. Anyway, so we're going to wait 30 minutes till this is done, and then we'll go to one more step. So we'll see you in about half an hour. Alrighty, we're back. I heard the beeper, so the bread is ready for the last step. So, better put my mitts on again, because it's a hot one. Shut my timer off here. Alright, let's get this bread out. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take the bread out of the Dutch oven, take the parchment paper off, and put the bread back in. So this is what it looks like right now. It's not fully cooked, so now we're going to put this back in the Dutch oven. Ooh. We're going to put it back in there for 10 minutes or 15, 20, whatever darkness you want on the bread. We're not going to put the lid back. We're just going to put this back in here without the lid for 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, we'll be back for the final viewing. Alrighty, I got my gloves on. That means we're on the final step, taking the bread out of the oven. So let's have a look. Now remember, this is very hot. Very hot. So what we'll do is we'll take the bread out. Take my glove off. Hear that? That means it's ready. Put it on my cooling rack, and there's your loaf of bread. No kneading, no nothing. So remember the steps. There's only 4 ingredients: flour, yeast, salt, and water. Once it's mixed together, you put it on the counter for 3 hours covered in saran wrap. 3 hours or more. That doesn't matter. Then you dump it on your flour board, fold it a couple of times, back into the pot with parchment paper on the countertop for 30 more minutes. While it's sitting there, you preheat your oven to 450. After 30 minutes, parchment paper and all goes into the hot Dutch oven for 30 minutes. Take it out, take the lid off, take the parchment paper out, put the bread back in for anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes, whatever, however brown you want it. And that's about it. So this bread is not to be used next week. You got to eat it either today or tomorrow, or cut it in half, wrap it in tin foil, and freeze it. But it's got no preservatives in it to keep it lasting. So it's got to be eaten. The best thing is, right now it's hot. In about an hour and a half, slice it with butter on it. Delicious. Now, the other bread that I start making is called raisin bread. And I've given some to Jennifer, my oldest daughter, who actually encouraged me to do this video for the seniors. And my granddaughter gave me a call and she told me how delicious it was. So if anybody wants to see how to make raisin bread, subscribe at the bottom and we'll have a little session on raisin bread. All right, so I hope you enjoy it. It's not hard to make. And maybe we'll see you again in another video. Bye-bye.